Hi, Richard.
Hi, Brian. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And
Great.
second session, PaperTrail. So this is quite
Mm,
exciting as we already have subscribers. Subscribers. We already have people signing up for a waiting list. So definitely, we are going to have a very interesting month ahead in terms of what is PaperTrail, what we're doing, and people already signing up. So our session last week, we introduced PaperTrail, which is an AI-powered compliance management platform designed to simplify and unify how businesses handle their obligation, right? So, but
mm.
today, we want to take a more practical look. So, what does compliance look like before using PaperTrail, for example? What changes once the platform is in place in an organization? And what kind of results can companies realistically expect? So,
Yeah.
it's not an instant magic silver bullet, but over time, what is the expectation?
Hmm.
So, so pretty much let's talk to about managing expectations. So before, um, if you're happy with that, before we talk about
Hmm.
improvement, help us understand what most businesses are up to against before paper trail.
Okay. So for most small and mid-sized companies, compliance feels a little bit more like chaos, if you
Right.
had to put it into a single term.
Yeah.
You're managing literally thousands of pages worth of readable framework material, ISO standards, ESG disclosures, cyber essentials, environmental reporting, governance codes, et
Right.
cetera,
Right.
often scattered across teams and across spreadsheets, et cetera, et cetera. But it begins with the source material, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now, just to give you some basic estimates,
Yeah.
right? If we just took all of the frameworks that we're addressing for the UK, we're talking about close to 2,000 pages of documentation. Now, that's why a lot of people are drawn to a consultant who
Yeah.
is expected to kind of know that stuff, right?
Right. Right.
Because especially when you're talking about multiple frameworks and standards and disclosures, et
Yeah.
cetera, you're talking about anywhere from, 1,500 to 1,800 applicable pages of documentation
Okay.
across all
Yeah.
of the frameworks. Now, that represents, as an outcome, about, I don't know, 5 to 7, let's just average it out at about 600 individual disclosures, right?
Right.
Expectations for disclosure, and easily over 200 reportable metrics, right? And that's before any overlap is removed. That's before
Right.
there's any efficiencies added and stuff like that. Um, Most of it is actually repeated work.
Right.
Different departmental, sorry, different departments gather the same evidence in
Right.
slightly different ways. The wording is slightly different, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that whole process is slow, expensive, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's kind of reactive. And that's the reality for most SMEs and mid-market companies.
That is quite impressive well, surprising in terms of actually the burden that they have to go through. So
No,
no wonder
yeah,
why PwC actually this year PwC did a survey and found that 73% of this is outsourced. That meaning that they are paying somebody to do it and it's quite expensive. So what does
yeah.
that picture look like after adopting PaperTrail then?
So the difference is night and day. The
Right,
platform basically recognizes and merges overlapping requirements automatically,
right,
turning duplication into structure. So we take all of these frameworks and all of the disclosures, and we basically distill them into a common set of pillars and themes and
right.
that kind of thing, right? So for a typical UK SME,
Yeah,
that means going from around 600 scattered obligations down to about, let's say, 200 unified ones, right?
right, right,
Or from about 200 scattered metrics to about 80 to
right,
90. It really depends on the type of business, but
right.
you know, um, you could typically expect that it's you're looking forward to benefiting from roughly a 60 to 70% reduction in the management surface,
Right.
right? Which is all the stuff that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
management surface. Reducing that by more than half, way more than half, is one of the benefits of PaperTrail. Suddenly, compliance stops being a maze,
Yeah.
of spreadsheets, and it becomes a clear, living profile of where the business stands that isn't too detailed to even, get a
Yeah.
picture from. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite impressive because when people talk, and you see in LinkedIn quite often that this is coming through, I say, oh, how to avoid burnout or how to leadership are overwhelmed. So no
Mm.
wonder where it's coming from. Probably it's all these things that I have to do, but really, really are not contributing or moving the needle in terms of the business growth or revenue. But what actually happened inside the platform so that to create that transformation?
Okay. Well, it's a guided life cycle, not a
Right.
one-click outcome, right?
Yeah.
So we've discussed this before, that step one is
Yeah.
the onboarding, right?
Yeah.
The conversational intake that
Yeah.
helps the platform understand how your business operates. And it
Right.
establishes, a business profile, right?
Right.
And then from that profile, the intelligence of the platform, but there's also a lot of built-in real intelligence, human
Right.
intelligence, expertise, and experience in
Yeah.
addition to AI, right?
Right.
But step two is automated generation of everything relevant to that business profile,
Right.
right? Frameworks, disclosures, metrics, stakeholders,
Right.
all tailored to that business model,
Right.
right? And that would be your compliance profile
Yeah.
that gets established. Now, the more detailed you are in responding to the questions for the business profile, the higher the confidence level, and everything is marked with a confidence percentage.
Yeah.
Um, that the compliance profile is going to match it for quality, right? Step three is a part that has to involve humans. The AI
Yeah.
can't guess as to your evidence, right? So strategies can also be different. We can, the AI tool will suggest them when none is present,
Right.
but evidence collection does still rely on the user, right? The system helps identify, upload, and basically gather and quantify the proof
Right.
against all of the requirements,
Yeah.
right? After that comes a gap analysis. That's the existing evidence that you have. And then you end up with gap analysis
Mm.
and task assignment, right? That shows you exactly what's missing and who needs to act and the priorities of those tasks and gaps,
Right.
right? Finally, the platform, it's a management platform, right? It's an ongoing cycle of improvement and reporting. So compliance keeps evolving and strengthening over
Yeah.
time. That's just, you know, so that's how PaperTrail turns compliance from a project into a process that
Right.
that that becomes a part of your business.
Yeah.
And the most amount of work a company would have to do would be, just the initial intake and review
Right.
and evidence collection. After that, it becomes maintenance. Yeah.
That's well, that's quite impressive because then instead of being isolated fire fire drills that you have to do every now and again, all of a sudden it becomes like a constant process that can incorporate in the company workflow in their activities, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's very simple. To make it easier in the future, the
yeah,
earlier you establish a paper trail,
yeah,
the better. When it comes to
right,
compliance, the sooner you establish some kind of paper trail,
yeah,
the better it is for the future, and
right.
the less disruptive it is in the future.
And in if let's say a company say, okay, interesting, I would like to do this. So how quickly can a company expect to see those results? Like that is
Hmm.
from sudden activity because have audit or reports to present, etc., to
Okay.
become like a process.
So they've got their login and off we go. How quickly can they expect to see results?
Yeah,
Well, some of it is dependent on them, of course, but
right.
visibility is instant, right? Within hours of onboarding, I mean, virtually instant, right? Within
Yeah,
hours of onboarding, assuming that you complete
Yeah.
conscientiously the onboarding process,
Right. Right.
you'll see your mapped frameworks and where they overlap. You know what I mean? You're going to see, where the work needs to be done,
Yeah.
right? Evidence collection takes a little bit longer. Typically, it could take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, depending on how well the business already documents
Right.
its operations, right? It really depends. And then, after the evidence collection, resolving gaps, that is kind of dependent on the priorities given to, by the business to closing those gaps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I was to take a user who was like gung ho and ready to go, right? I'd say within the first quarter of having the tool,
Right.
most users would have a complete evidence-backed profile and would have very measurable progress for their
That's
compliance agenda.
right. Right. That is quite fast because then you can build on that. It's not something that actually is a
Yeah,
big bang activity and then all of a sudden disappears. So it's all there, and you can build on that for the following quarters and years to come.
correct.
So and so we spoke at last session we spoke about AI and but what still depends on people and not AI because actually
Mm.
it's a big fuss now about AI and also now all these concerns are coming up and I say well AI is like hallucinating etc etc. So what is one and what is not AI?
Well, quite a lot still depends on people, and that's by
Right.
design, right? The SME or the mid-market enterprise is
Yeah.
composed of people. You can't have compliance without involving people, right?
Right.
AI can automate the structure, it
Yeah.
can analyze patterns, it can even suggest strategies, but it
Yeah.
can't replace accountability
Right.
or produce the evidence by itself,
Yeah.
right? Policies, proof, and intent still have to come from people.
Yeah.
The platform does about 70% of the heavy lifting, the
Right.
mapping, analysis, and recommendations, right? While the organization provides the evidence and validates the results.
Right.
That's what keeps compliance authentic and credible and audit
Yeah.
ready is that human participation.
Yeah.
But what you don't want is for the majority of the cost of compliance, right?
Right.
Everything has a total cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And when the man hours being spent and the attention that's being, spent on compliance inside of a company, that should be the major component, not
Right.
$200 an hour consultants
Right. Right.
and duplication of effort
Yeah.
and confusion across teams and all that other kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we're targeting to reduce that total, that total cost of ownership of compliance by
Right.
80%. That's what we're shooting to, right?
Right.
So you still need people. Anybody who would expect AI to be able to replace
Yeah.
that human component, it's just not realistic, right?
Right. Unless you
But
be,
we can have AI do the things that AI can do.
yeah.
And it wouldn't even be able to do that if we also didn't train it with decades worth of expertise and
Right.
experience.
Yeah. And talking about people, so for this smaller team that they already stretching thin, like the some companies they this many of these obligations are sitting on the board of director or the company
Mm.
secretary, but they don't have that. They have an MD or a director or somebody that is doing the. How much time should they plan to invest in terms because they already stretch?
We anticipate that most teams would spend at least a few hours during the first week,
Right.
uh, completing the onboarding and gathering what evidence they
Right.
could.
Right.
Right. After that, it shifts to maintenance. Really, it does. So you basically want to address gaps, some of which you'll deprioritize, some of
Yeah.
which is going to take you a little bit more time. For
Right.
instance, if it's a case of having a policy, you might want to take some time to create that policy. That would be somebody's task,
Yeah.
right? That kind of thing. But really, once you're at that point where you have some gaps that that still need to be closed,
Right.
uh, but you've got plenty of time throughout the year to actually address these things, right?
Right.
Um, Quarterly review, some auto-generated reports, and occasional updates, right? So
Right.
ultimately, the goal is for the the busy work around compliance to be measured in hours per month, not days per week.
Right, right,
But the clarity it brings saves far more time than it takes. Let's just put it that way.
right. It sounds now at this stage of the conversation, it sounds very easy because we started with like thousands of pages and obligations at the
Mm,
beginning, and now we're talking about hours per month or per quarter, and it sounds like
mm,
a big, big, massive issue now reduced to something very simple that actually flows through the organization and grows in terms of a maintenance thing, right? It sounds
yeah.
like it really is fulfilling a purpose. Actually, today is very
Well, the
different.
technology has enabled
Right, right.
the possibility of democratizing
Yeah,
compliance,
yeah,
right? Just like the availability of certain technology
yeah.
made it possible for QuickBooks to democratize accounting in the early
Right,
80s, with an app that became more accessible, right? And was able to wrap the complexity in
right.
an easier user interface. We've got AI,
Yeah,
right? Now, if we didn't have that, if we didn't have a means of technology advancing things,
right.
then you would be back to what a lot of people are doing nowadays, which is
Yeah,
step by step, framework by framework,
yeah,
duplication of effort, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
And that's for companies that didn't have somebody who was a compliance consultant
Right.
working full time or a compliance role, right?
Yeah. And once they reach this steady state, what does paper
Mm.
trail leave them with? Like it's
Um, what does it leave them with? I'd
mm,
say it leaves them with something they've likely never had before, a living compliance legacy.
right,
They start establishing a history. That's what I mean
right,
by legacy, right? Every disclosure, every piece of evidence, every improvement action becomes part of a permanent structured record,
right,
their own digital paper trail.
right,
That's why we named it that, right? It's the establishment and the maintenance of a paper trail for compliance,
right.
right? It gives you proof of accountability. It's ready for audit or regulatory
Yeah,
review, at any time, and it belongs entirely to the company, right?
right,
It doesn't belong to a consultant; it belongs to them.
right.
Over time, that paper trail becomes one of the company's most valuable assets,
Yeah,
right? A record of integrity and diligence and continued improvement. That's
yeah, and
basically, what it leaves them.
yeah, and you see every day people are talking about transparency and efficiency, and
Mm,
particularly if they are thinking to buy other organization or like an acquisition or emerging, etc. All these create a more solid and integrated company.
yeah.
Wow, this is quite impressive because actually from thousands of things to do now become something actually is transferable and is trackable. What happened in the past and what we can do in the future. And I think that we close with always with the same thing. So
Mhm.
um, we always want to see what this looks like in reality. So if you would like to define success with paper trail, so what does it look like?
Yeah. We always talk about that
Yeah,
beginning with the end in mind, right?
yeah, exactly.
Um, First, I'd say that success isn't about, automation replacing people,
Right,
right? It might replace you having to reach out and spend money on some other services,
right,
right? Um, but internally, it's about people being more efficient
right,
and spending as little possible time with a technology solution on compliance so that they can focus their time on other important activity.
right.
Compliance doesn't generate a lot of revenue, right? So it's one of those
Yeah,
things where you kind of want to do it as efficiently as possible, right? And I really like the idea of seeing companies move from reactive, yeah,
yeah,
like firefighting, a reactive and fragmented approach to
yeah,
compliance to a proactive and integrated approach.
yeah, yeah,
That's clearly superior. So I want them to experience going from, you know, uh, 2,000 pages of rules to a single dashboard of truth,
right.
for their business,
Yeah,
right? From uncertainty to confidence,
right.
right?
Yeah,
So paper trail doesn't remove responsibility,
right.
right? It just makes it manageable and measurable and sustainable.
Right.
And that's what success looks like.
Fantastic. So I think that actually is no better way to wrap up today. Like something that is
Mhm.
very, very esoteric, if you may. Like you have to do it, and then you don't have a way to start, or you have to outsource all these activities. Now you can have it in-house, and you can manage it, you can measure it, and it's sustainable. So I think it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I'm not saying, let me just say
Sure.
that there is some place for some consulting potentially
Oh yeah, yeah,
still in the future, but it would be more about, trying to establish a strategic approach to, to improving the
yeah,
metrics and disclosures, right? Something
yeah,
along those lines, as opposed to just figuring out where you stand.
yeah.
That's a waste of money on consulting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you mentioned the example. I said accountants didn't disappear after
No.
QuickBooks took over the admin task of accounting.
Hmm.
They became more strategic and more specific in terms of helping companies to grow and being the advisors of the companies in terms of what the tax efficiencies and refinancing the companies, or et cetera, et cetera. So this looks like the same.
Yeah, that's the
Technology,
idea.
as you mentioned always, you said this is a technological challenge. Is not
Hmm.
something that we this generation is not going to come over again as we did in the past. Okay, excellent, Richard. Thank you very much. I think that this is an absolutely fantastic session. We'll regroup next week for another session to explain and give more visibility to what is PaperTrail and how we can help people to be more efficient with their compliance obligations.
Great. I look forward to it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Fran. Bye bye.